very important and critical for us to discuss, which is advocacy and policy and politics, in more ways than one, not just the literal sense, but how are we using that power? And I want to bring up my guests. How are we using that power and in representation and in rooms that matter, right? Let me bring up Charlotte, Michelle, and Diana. Thank you, guys. When we talk about policy and we talk about politics and advocacy, what we're really talking about is power, right? Who has it and how is it being used and how do we have a say in that, right? Um, I know that politics, as a just growing up, was always like a dirty word. We don't talk politics. You don't mention, you don't bring this up, and nobody knows. Nobody was educated, on anything and issues that matter. And we don't know how to respond, right? And we live in a world today, in today's climate, where we have to be more engaged, whether we want to or not. We're in a state where there are different ways to advocate for our community and for ourselves as a whole, and it's our responsibility, and we're obligated to do that, to do so as leaders, as thought leaders. So I want to introduce our panelists as we dive into policy and ideally these laws that are governing our lives, and how do we bridge the gap in some of these issues, and how do we overcome some of the things that we have to overcome in order to freely feel comfortable going out there and advocating for whatever it is, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be politics as a whole, but whatever issue that you feel, I need to say something. There's something wrong about this problem, right? It's up to us to raise our hand and say, I'm going to be the one to say something, because si no, tú quién, right? So we have to be leaders in that way as well. So I want to welcome our guest, Charlotte Castillo. Charlotte is the managing director of Poderistas, if you don't know, a leading digital community for Latinas and seasoned media executive with over 20 years of brand building experience. Welcome, Charlotte. And now, Dr. Michelle Cohen, Commissioner. Dr. Michelle Cohen, she's a commissioner of Hays County, Texas, organizational leadership expert and an advocate for our community equity and access to services. And Diana Maria Riva, an award-winning actress known for Dead to Me, The Gordita Chronicles, and Glamorous, and a co-founder of Latinas Acting Up to amplify the Latina voices in entertainment. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Yes, I'm excited for this conversation. You know, I want to ask this first question to all of you. I think that this is important. When we think about advocacy, it often starts with that one voice, right? How can everyday people begin to see themselves as change makers as well, even if they don't hold any public office or any community leadership position today? So I'll start with you, Charlotte. We'll go with you.
Sure, of course. I actually think that those that don't hold public office hold more power, right? I think that for us at Poderistas, one of the things we talk about, and we're a nonpartisan C3, and I always like to say that for us, it's not about who you vote for, what the policies you choose, but it's about being informed. I think that's the number one thing. And that's not an easy thing. It sounds like it's an easy thing, especially in this day and age with the mis and disinformation. But I think the power that we have starts with understanding it and understanding where our place is within the full structure. So that's to me number one. And I'll say there are five things. And for us, like the five keys of power. Number one is being informed, right? The second one is kind of what we're doing here today. I think being connected to your community so you don't feel alone. We have, that's part of the work that Poderistas does, this idea of finding power within being amongst each other. So you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're in a silo. So you can kind of have the dialogue with each other. Number three, I think, is being grounded in the culture. I think if you look at our history and you look at our cultural practices and you look at our values, you will find that there is a lot of powerful work that we've done. We come from powerful people, and that alone, just knowing that, really leads to this confidence and this motivation to then in turn it into yourself. Number four is being involved. And again, if you put these all together, you can become involved because you're informed, you feel grounded in your community, and then you're connected. And then one that I think gets overlooked, but we believe is incredibly important. And especially as us, as mujeres, as madres, as Latinas, as all the multi-hyphenates, it's health. We believe that you need to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, because as we all know and we've heard, we are, the ones that are graduated from college. We're starting, businesses. We are kind of the linchpin in all of our communities and our families. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not able to do that. So again, for us, is really keeping in mind, and for Latinas and for myself, keeping in mind all those aspects of power. And once we fully kind of engage, we have a lot of power to give and to leverage.
I love that. I love that. I appreciate that so much. Dr. Michelle, I'll throw that to you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So, um, it was mentioned, that a lot of us Latinas didn't grow up in politics. Our knowledge of politics was very minimal. In my household, my dad said, you don't discuss politics, you don't talk about who you vote for. It was a private, event. And so I've never grown up that way about politics, never really knowing anything about it, not truly understanding the importance of it at a young age. And as far as like finding my voice of advocacy, it's before I was a county commissioner, I was a community advocate. I feel that sometimes an event happens in your life that is so impactful where you feel that you need to do something. And for me, it was the COVID pandemic. Watching, everyone was home, watching TV, watching the national news, following that, Latinos were being most impacted, marginalized communities were being most impacted. And I was watching this, I was watching my own county, and they were not publishing what was going on here. And so I started writing letters and emails about, could you release the demographics? And because I wanted to know. And sure enough, Latinos were leading in every category related to COVID. And also at the same time, I thought that our county was not doing enough to protect the people that, which we learned, we know now who is on the front line of pandemics now. We absolutely know that now. And so I just took it upon myself to buy PPE and hang out at COVID testing centers and pass out free masks and sanitizer, doing whatever I could to help protect my community that was being so severely impacted. And from that work, I mean, I could not believe the amount of outpouring of support to me and the organization, a very grassroots organization I just named Hayes Latinos United, and to just kind of brand it and get some recognize that we were trying to do something for community and build trust. But the people that turned out, the volunteers, the businesses that wanted to help was amazing. And, it just grew into this bigger organization of helping community. And it just so happened around that time that this seat came up for election. And it was an open seat. And I thought, you know what do I have to lose? Maybe I can help my community in a different way, through funding, through policy, through, whatever I could do. And so I took a chance, which is very scary to get into politics. You definitely put yourself out there and you have to navigate the spaces of political parties, the cliques, all these things that happen, kind of behind the scenes. And I won. I am the first Latina to hold this seat in Hayes County. I have, done so many great things in my 3 years here. But it's so interesting to see me in different rooms with places where people don't look like me. It is dominantly white, over the age of 60, rooms. And to see these people, they're not expecting me. I'll tell you that. When they see Dr. Michelle Cohen is coming to some meeting, they don't expect a Latina to walk in that room. And so it is always fun to kind of watch that. But it has just been such an amazing journey for me to find my voice, find that advocacy voice, and now to find this voice as a political representative for the community that is over 50% Hispanic, right? To have someone in this position that looks like them, right? Which has never happened. And so it is always, it's a great honor for me to be in this job, but it is very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. And we appreciate you for your service and continued service. And yeah, thank you so much for that. Diana.
Hi, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for having me. You know, I think the easiest and the first thing to say is like, I'm an actor, so clearly I'm not a politician. You know, people could say I'm a bullshit artist, but I earn a paycheck for it, so it's okay. You know, the Dr. Cohen said it very clearly and specifically that often it's an event in life that launches you into action. And that is exactly what happened with Latinas Acting Up. In the moment that I knew something needed to be done, I was sitting on my couch angry at the idea that if SAG-AFTRA, our union for actors, were going to go on strike, we needed to stay united because we had a history of not being united and hurting ourselves as a community of actors in the industry. And I took the idea of Latinas Acting Up as an organized picketing group to Lisa Vidal, my co-founder of Latinas Acting Up. She's on a panel, I think, later this afternoon, and you'll hear from her. And we set out week to week with the orchestrated and very mindful impetus of we have to hold the line. We have to fight for these inequities that we're trying to survive in this business. We have to make sure that we get a sustainable wage and living, all these things that were affecting us as a whole, as performers. And then I was taking it from the perspective of being a single parent. What do I need to be able to maintain this job, this work, and raise my children by myself? Lisa had her reasonings, but also the main thing of it is that Lisa and I have been in the business for a long, long time. We had seen the inequities grow. We've seen them get greater, the crevice widen, and we've seen the very slow movement of changing anything. So when we got organized and we decided to speak up, we didn't have politics in mind. We just had resolve, and we would get on there, and if you heard about us, we were on the picket line, we were dancing, we were doing flash dances, we were getting calls from people saying, come down to Fox, come down to Sony, come down, as if we were a band. And all we wanted to do was get attention and keep ourselves in the momentum of holding the line and getting to the finish line for this strike. And we did that with the mindset of because we deserve better, because we need better, and we're worth better. And that grew into this instantaneous group of 80 to 90 women that first week showing up on the picket line with us. And we had no idea that's the impact that we were going to have. We just called our Latinas, like our local mafias, and we're like, girl, you got to get on the picket line. We need to be together and do this. So we thought about 30 or 40 would show up. We had the t-shirts, we had the signs, and 90 showed up, 80 to 90 women. We didn't know who they were, but we knew they were all in the industry. It was something that was clear. It was a sentiment that was clear that we shared with many other Latinas in the industry from various stages of their careers. So we knew there was a voice that hadn't been heard enough, or at least not loud enough. So coming together was just the impetus for us to see change. And it wasn't a political thought. It was a self-worth, of value, of what we contribute to the entertainment community. So it was something that grew from there and taught us very quickly that you just have to be organized in your heart and your soul about what you want. And that will drive you to lead, or drive you to fall into a position of leadership, or congregate or whatnot. And that's all we're going with, is what's in our hearts. And lead like a mother. Yes, we always call each other, we're the titis of the group. We've been there, done that, seen it all. And we want to see this younger generation of Latinas in the industry go through the journey a little differently, if not better than us.
I love that so much. But that's such great answers and responses to that. We have a conviction about something, especially if you're in this space, right? We all, as Latinas, intrinsically, we have a conviction about how we wish the world would be, how we can make the world a better place, how we can make the world more equal, more equitable for all. Right? Because as a mother, we're looking out and we want everyone to be fed. We want everyone to be housed. We want everyone to be clothed. And that is such a beautiful point of the start of advocating. It doesn't necessarily have to be involved in politics, but it is about advocating for a cause that you believe in, because if you don't, who will?
That's
And if
right.
someone else is doing it, how do you align with them to and partner up with them? If two people have that vision to say, let's do this together. We both believe that this is an issue that if we stay quiet, nothing's going to change. And nothing's ever changed in history when we stay quiet. It's making the noise. And that is and can be very fearful for many people to say, okay, I'm going to go into that fire first, but with conviction and with like, I am not going to take it. I can't survive. I can't breathe if I don't do something about this issue or this matter. So I love everything that you guys shared. So Charlotte, we're going to go to, how can we shift, the narrative from being seen as underrepresented to being recognized as essential voices to shaping the future of this country truly?
Um, Well, I think, for us, and I say us, I say poderistas, and I think in general, I think the power of storytelling is sometimes undervalued. I think, I think Diana's example is a great one. Actually, both Dr. Cohen and Diana's example are a great one, where they were sitting at home, not thinking that they were going to start these movements, run for office. But it started with a belief in them, a belief in like a one issue. And that's the thing, that there's so many issues. We tell our community, pick the one that's most important to you, pick the one that you feel that you have cultural and lived experience around, because that's the one that you're going to do the best in. That's the one that you're going to lean into. That's the one that's most authentic to you. And then tell that story. Tell the story of your life. Tell the story of your experience, because storytelling is everything. I see it and the power of it is how you connect with people. It's authentic. When I remember seeing you, Diana and Lisa, and the bailando, and it was so fun, and it felt so real and authentic. It's like they're battling for their livelihoods, and forget that they're, I like to call fancy people, but they're in the struggle too. And there was something about that to me, I think, really connected with community and women all around the country, even though it was a very specific issue. But this idea that you were out there, you're not just on the glossy screen, you were out there because you had a belief. Dr. Cohen, that you're in your community, that you're being seen as, wait, she had this issue, she saw this, she started a drive for PPC. PPC, is that what it was called? I don't remember anymore. PPE, right? And again, I think that's what people connect with, the story of it, the real, forget about the policy, forget about the details, because a lot of us believe that we don't know enough, that we don't have enough information, that you need, like we like to say, a PhD in civics to be able to share our voice. And you don't. You know what? You have a PhD in your life, what impacts you, how it impacts your family. Those are the things that and you know well. Nobody can tell you what it is that you need. So now it's about using that knowledge, sharing that knowledge, and surrounding that knowledge with more information. That's where the information comes in. Okay, let me learn how I can get that. I always use the stop sign in the corner of my block, right? Like because I think it's really tangible. If you have children and you live on a street that doesn't have a stop sign and it's dangerous, that's something that's impacting you every day. Now you want to know, how do I get a stop sign there? Look it up, Google it. How do I get a stop sign in my corner? And by the way, this is something that's going to impact your day-to-day living. You have a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old and you want that change. There is a way to get that done very readily in your community, usually. Just dig in. But again, it starts with a cause that is important to you. And then you have to tell the story. And for us, one of the ways that we're shifting the narrative is telling the stories of women who are doing that, showing by example, because if you can't see it, you can't be it. We amplified, the Latinas Acting Up movement, because we were like, look at what they're doing. They are taking control of the narrative. They are showing up to get change made, to make change happen. You too can do this. Here's how. We have featured many, many women who have never run for office and now run for office. We have featured women that, started off as vending, selling food on the streets and now opened up a brick and mortar. All, from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies to Latinas who are starting businesses. Again, we're showing these stories so that women feel motivated, feel confident, and then in turn say, wait, I can do that too. Wait, I understand how, I have a passion in me. I want to get clear running water in my home. That's important to me. Here's how I can do it. And then we share resources of how you can do it in your local community. But I think this idea of over communicating, sharing the power of your story, and not undervaluing your stories and our stories, we think is a way to change the narrative.
Mm. Love that. I love that. And we do have so much passion in this community. Imagine if we were able to harness that with,
Mhm.
literally a form of measurement. And there is science can
Mhm.
measure the power of passion. Ideally
Right.
it's moving.
Right. How do you measure changing in motivation and confidence? Trust me, that keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and how much change can we do if we unite and put all of that passion and towards one common mission, right? One solving, like you mentioned, one problem at a time, right? How can we harness everybody's passion that is able to literally change the world into a place where we can use that for good?
I mean, I think, and the challenge is that sometimes there are, and I think we'll talk about this, there are differing views on the challenges, right? There are differing
Yes,
views.
yes,
For
yes.
us, what's most important, and again, I keep saying for us, for Poderistas, and just in general, for me as an individual, is that what I ultimately, like when I think about what's my goal as a leading an organization, is that I want people not to underestimate the power of Latinas. Right? That no matter how you believe, what you believe, how you vote, who you vote for, whatever,
Yeah,
that we are a force to be reckoned with, that it's not just demography, right? Like your demography is not always destiny, is that we're acting on it. We know the numbers, we keep hearing them. We're going to be this percentage, and by 2050, I believe, we're going to be 30% of women in this country. But are we participating at 30%? We're not. That's what we want to change, right? That's what we need to change. We need to show the power of our numbers. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's a silent majority. And that's the thing. It's like, so sometimes it's difficult to just have the one issue that we all align with, because we have different opinions, different approaches. But to me, it's about showing up, that all of us, 30% show up, and then we can do the math of how it breaks down. But wow, that group is a group that you want to cater to, that you want to hear from, that you want to listen to, because they are going to show up. I mean, we have a wonderful example in the African American female community, right? And however they are organized, there's a lot of cultural and generational information. We're still a new community, but when I think of it, they are a group of women that hold it down. How do we get there? How do
yeah,
we get there?
yes. So many nuggets there. Commissioner Michelle, so what
Mhm.
strategies would you recommend for leaders in public roles who may feel discouraged or overwhelmed? And how can they continue to advocate effectively for their communities as you have, even in difficult times?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I've been in this office for 3 years, and every day is a battle, every day. And I definitely, have my highs and lows every day. And it does get to me, I mean, being a community advocate is a whole lot different than being in political office. When you're doing the advocacy work, people are thanking you, they're asking, how can we help you? But then when you're in political office, it is, what can you do for me? Like, what can there is an expectation that you need to provide and give to your community, right? Um, but what's great about my county, there are 4 commissioners in this county. Half of the county is led by 2 Latinas that represent the east side of the county. And so together, we have been able to do a lot of great things. Just, I think, being Latina, I'm the new one with all these ideas, working with someone who's been in a position for 20 something, years, who has a lot of just institutional knowledge. And so together, we've been able to, bring infrastructure, county services, more robust public health, all these things that my community needs, more, food distribution, school supplies, all those basic needs that people need, we are bringing them to the county, working collaboratively. And so it's been, but, even though that's all great work, it is still a challenge to get it done. And so a lot of times when I feel myself just a little maybe discouraged or stressed about what's going on, there's a very, political issue that we're having to deal with. Sometimes just going back and working in the community kind of helps me reset, and it reminds me of the why, because it's really easy to get caught up in the political stuff, right? Everything that's going on at the national level, it will definitely come down to the local level, and you feel it, and you're trying to navigate, and you're trying to compromise. But what helps me is, just walking down the street and having conversations with people, working at food distribution drives, seeing what's going on in the community. That helps me remember the why, right? And then I'm like, okay, that fight was worth it. I can move on. But that usually really helps me a lot. Also, building a robust small network. One thing that I have learned, when you're running for office, everyone's behind you. The big groups, the locals, they're all behind you, and then it is very interesting to see how quickly people turn against you after you've taken office. And so my circle of friends, or that people that I trust, is very small. It is very small now. And so I keep those people close to me. But that definitely helps me with, when I'm feeling the stresses. And also, social media is, everyone knows that is crazy, especially in politics, right? So I'm always getting beat up over, maybe a vote that I took. And so I've learned to just not look at social media as much. I kind of separate myself from that. I do something else. I have a kid in high school, and I focus on her stuff. I stay off of social media because it gets in your head. It will get in your head, and it will put you in a place you don't want to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just, now being a politician for 3 years, I've kind of learned to adapt. And then that's one great thing that us Latinas are great, is we can adapt, we can change. That is just part of who we are. And I think, and it's something that I've just learned to become just through experience, right? I'm truly a natural introvert. And so this is not a normal space for me. I have learned to turn this on and be this person that I need to be to get my message across, right? But that takes time to build. And I've talked to young Latinas, like in high school, and they'll hear me speak, and I'll tell them that, I'm really kind of naturally a shy person, an introvert, and they'll come up to me afterwards and like, how do you do it? Like, how do you get up and speak in front of people and crowds? And I'm like, it takes practice. Like it really does. And I've learned to accept that that's not a weakness of mine. It is just who I am. And as the sooner you recognize that that is just who you are, then you learn how to maneuver it, right? You learn tricks and how to, voice your opinion or give your speeches or fight for what you want. But that just takes time, but it does help when you have a group of other Latinas help supporting you and just being that support person for you, right? It's great to have that. But, just for me personally in this role, it has taken time for me to become who I am and find that voice for me right now.
I love that. We have to be kinder to ourselves and learn the journey of the process of what we're going through and what we're doing and what we're willing to do and what we have a conviction on. Diana, I want to ask you, in spaces where we may be the only Latina in the room, or the only or maybe a small number of Latinas in a specific space, how can we stand up to policies like you have for the SAG-AFTRA, and how can we stand up to those practices that are really unjust without feeling like we need to shrink back in any way?
Well, I think as Charlotte was saying, you have to find what's important to you and what resonates with you. And sometimes it's specific and sometimes it's community-wide. So things that appeal to me that I know that I need to speak for come from my history of being a single parent, single income, blah, blah, blah. Those are the things that I've walked through that I want to see certain policy for. If there's other rights, that speak to you that are different than mine, then you should. And, you have to find your angle. And your angle of how you're going to speak up. And everyone has their own, Charlotte and Poderistas, Dr. Cohen from Office, Lisa and I from this platform in the entertainment industry, we have an agenda. We're not just a platform to bring the women together of mentorship and empowerment. We are. But our agenda is also business oriented, and it's not just for better pay and equal rights. It's all of that. But it's to see more of us out in front. Because as you said, if you don't see it, you can't be it. We literally have a physical, literal platform of seeing it. And so if we don't advocate and get louder as a group of Latinas in the industry, from in front of and behind the camera, to have more shows, characters, storylines that are about all of us, all of you will not be represented. And if you are represented, you're represented in this much, or in these three categories of Latinos in general that are highlighted the way we typically see them. And we can sit here today and go down this roster of all these phenomenal women here and all these phenomenal participants and hear 180 something different stories, and we don't see anything like that reflected in our stories on television and film. We have a lot that should be seen. And because of that, that's our perspective. We're coming in from the physical platform of we need to be seen. How do we do that together? We need support. So it's not just come support Hollywood, support our stories, support our work, because when it is supported and it does well, you see more. When they don't, when we fight, when our community infights about one project or the other, which we may not all agree on, of course, but we have to be like the Latino families that we are. We go home, we fight about it together, and then in front, we're united. We have to stay united, because as Lisa and I have told everyone in this realm that comes to us in this platform, that when, not if, when they see us divided, they step back and they don't want to do anything with us. They don't want to. And right now, with what we're seeing, literally with our own eyes on television, is our community being eradicated. So we quite literally have to use our platform to show what you're seeing is misinformation, or what you're seeing is a stereotype or a narrative or whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot of other stories that we have, and we have to take that active part. You don't always have to know what the step is, what the step is, the next indicated step is going to be, because it will reveal itself. But if you know where you want to go and what it is that you want to achieve, Lisa and I every day review, what do we do with this? How are we going to do this? We just know from our hearts where we want to go and the change we want to see. You know where you want to go and the change you want to see, then just start taking every step that affords itself in front of you to get to that change that you want to see. And then all of a sudden, we're 300 members in 3 states and figuring out what is the next step. But the sooner we come together to support each other from whatever perspective we have, Poderistas, from public office, from an advocacy group in the entertainment industry, whatever it is, the more we invest in those different perspectives, then we come together and have a greater effect. It's not just one angle or the other. We need them all.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so we are over time, but I just want to get, if we were designing an advocacy playbook, what is one principle? We'll go just one principle each, and Diana, we'll start with you because I know you're on the set. What is one principle that you would add to this? And you guys shared so many great things that the whole thing needs to be in there. But what is one principle that calls out to you that, okay, we definitely need to have this in that playbook?
1.5, be genuine and reciprocity. What I do for you, do for me in return. We'll do it together and we'll get further.
Love that. Commissioner Cohen?
I would say probably always center yourself in advocacy. Remember the why. And if you remember the why, then you can continue the fight. And I think that's very important for us as leaders. And I always see that my job as a leader is to bring other leaders, create other leaders, and I'm always very aware of that. I don't want myself to be the last Latina in this office. I want another Latina to come behind me, and that's really, really important to me. So always, bring more.
Love that. And Charlotte?
Just one. And I think Diana spoke a little bit to this. I think the intersectionality of it all, like everything is really interconnected, gender, race, economics, the environment, everything. So when you're building a coalition or you're building for, advocacy, you have to think about that. And that actually will lead you to then collaborate and partner with other groups, right? It's not just the Latino agenda is very complicated. There's a lot, right? And I think you just have to keep that in mind. If we were rewriting, it's like it's intersectional. We have to think of it all. They're all really related. Yes, you focus on your thing, but how do you then bring it together with other folks in coalition?
I love that. Thank you guys so much for this panel. We have power, we have the money, we have the spending dollars, and we have the leadership in place and coming in place, right? So now let's put it together and inviting people and infecting people with that energy and that audacity to say we have a responsibility. And what is it? Let's come together and let's work together versus working in silos, and let's truly change the world and build it how we feel we need it to be, right? Because I know the way I want to see it, and we have to be responsible for that change ourselves. So thank you guys so much for your insight and yes, your beautiful souls and energy here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
this, bringing us
you.
all together.
Yes. All right, so we are going to move right